So, we've all been told things like, don't stab your brakes, don't yank on the throttle, keep your hand out of your pants when we have company over. So I want to go over some things that you can do with your hands on your motorcycle that could save your bike, yourself, and your comfort. But before we get into that, my name is Jeff, you are watching TrashWerks, and today we're going to be talking about stuff that you can do with your hands on a motorcycle. You know, whatever you do with your hands outside of that, that's between you and your homie with the pretty eyes who rides a Gixxer, all right? I'm not here to judge. But what I am here to do is go over some tips and tricks that could help seasoned riders as well as new riders. And we got a hog beating right here, brother. And the first thing that we are going to be talking about, which has been making its rounds due to a unfortunate accident, are going to be death wobbles. Now you might be asking yourself, Jeff, how are you both so handsome and so humorous? Well, it was luck of the draw. But you might also be asking yourself, what is a death wobble? Well, to put it in simple terms, death wobbles, sometimes also called tank slappers, are a phenomenon with motorcycles in which the front end starts to shake violently back and forth to the point where a rider can lose control of the motorcycle and crash. Now, at best, a death wobble or a tank slapper will give you a very introspective ride home, cardo's off, you're just riding in silence. But at worst, it could cause you to go down. Despite what you may have heard in the MSF or your local Facebook group, there's no real agreed upon fix to resolve a death wobble once it happens. Typically in the MSF you'll hear to lightly roll off your throttle, apply your rear brakes, and basically ride it out. And I'm not here to tell you how to fix a death wobble. I'm instead going to tell you how to prevent them. And luckily for all my broke boys out there, the solution is free. And extra luckily for all my super sport riders out there, it's also easy. The best way to prevent a death wobble is to not choke your handlebars. That's right, keep a light grip on them. And to understand why that works, we have to understand what causes a death wobble. And I'm going to keep things simple here. So, a death wobble occurs when your front wheel is out of alignment with your rear wheel and your motorcycle is overcorrecting. And that misalignment can happen from a multitude of things. Some examples include going over a bump at high speeds, coming down off of a wheelie, or if your front wheel just lifts up naturally and you put it back down and it's misaligned, or even losses in traction from, let's say, road conditions. And certain bikes are more susceptible to death wobbles than others, and a lot of that just has to do with suspension geometry. Motorcycles actually are pretty stable, and they can correct themselves. In fact, if you have cruise control, you can actually ride your motorcycle without even touching your handlebars. I'll actually show a video of it here. You'll see rider Zach Quartz hop on the back of bikes with passenger accommodations and ride them without his hand through Lover's Lane. So how does having a light grip on your handlebars prevent a death wobble if the bike will naturally do it when you have a misaligned front end? Well, the thing is, your bike's front end gets misaligned quite often actually while you're riding, and the bike will, as I mentioned before, autocorrect itself. If you go over a small bump, if you are slightly misaligned when your wheel touches back down, your bike will autocorrect, and it usually just takes a quick little snap and it'll be there. Now, if you are light on the grips, well, your front end will just go where it needs to be and your hands will follow. The problem that arises with a tight grip is that you'll be fighting that correction. So now that bike either takes longer to correct, which actually puts it more out of alignment, or it will overcorrect, which can make the problem even worse, resulting in what would have been a slight correction turning into a death wobble. Now, can you prevent every single death wobble from ever happening with a light grip? No. Again, some bikes are more prone to suspension instability than others, and if the conditions are great enough, it's going to happen no matter what. But in those instances where you can correct it, you might as well do it. Now, the next thing that I'm going to talk about also relates to having light controls, and is something that you might have heard in passing in your MSF, or again on your local Facebook page, which is the most reputable source of information on the internet or in the world in general, and that is going to be counter steering. So before I go over what counter steering is, let me talk about how it gets people in trouble. Sometimes you'll hear a story about a rider who maybe, let's say, goes into a corner too quickly, or the corner starts to tighten, or maybe even someone pulls out in front of a rider and they need to make a quick evasion to one side or the other. Now, sometimes when that happens, you'll hear a rider say that they were trying to turn their handlebars all they could and the bike was just not turning. So let's say, for example, like I am now, I need to turn right, and so I'm trying to twist the handlebars right, but my bike just isn't turning. In fact, it's pulling me more to the left. And well, the reason for that is counter steering. See, the way that motorcycle steering works, specifically at speed, the quicker you go, the more prevalent this is going to be, is that a motorcycle will tip in the opposite direction that the front wheel faces. So if you want to make a change to your steering angle, it's going to involve counter steering your bars. And again, this is something that's done at speed. If you are just rolling through a parking lot, then standard steering like you would on a bicycle is going to apply. But when you are on a motorcycle, the way that the gyroscopic forces work on bikes is you have to go opposite. Now, the best way to think about how to counter steer is to push in the direction you want to go. I know, it sounds counterintuitive, but let me give you a demonstration. So, you'll see my hands are both up. I cannot pull on this bar one way or the other. If I want to counter steer, I'm going to push in the direction that I want to go. So in this case, I have the left coming up, so I'm going to push with my left hand. And you can see the bike dips in. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, so my line's a little off, but that's just so you can understand it. And it doesn't take a lot of pressure. Now, the opposite of that is true as well. You can pull in the opposite direction you want to go to get the bike to tip that way. So in the same way that I would push to the left, I can also pull on the right, and the bike will dip to the left. So I pull, you can see the bike dips. And this isn't me with my body. You can see my body stays neutral. If I pull, it goes more to the right, or to the left rather. I pull more. If I let off, it straightens up. Pull more. And that's what counter steering is. And now, how does this tie back into having a light grip on the handlebars? Well, in the same way that your small input of keeping the bar where it is can ruin the bike's stability and cause a death wobble, the opposite is true as well. Your slight input can throw off the bike's stability and make it go the way that you want to. So, to give you an example, I'm going to keep my two fingers on this handlebar, and if I need to maneuver, if I need to swerve out of the way, if there's a pothole on the road, whatever there might be, I am just going to, and you can see my body, I'm staying perfectly neutral with my body. This is all just pulling and pushing on one side of my handlebar. That's all it takes. Again, still 3 fingers up, I'm just using my 2 here. Doesn't require a lot of grip. So obviously, if we have more control over the handlebar, if we have 2 hands on it, and if we have a larger handlebar, you have to remember a wider handlebar will make counter steering easier because you have more leverage over the steering axis. Whereas with a clip-on, if it's, let's say, tucked in here, that distance is a lot shorter than all the way out here. So if I'm more stable, I got 2 hands on the handlebar, I need to make my steering movements, I can do that easily. And it's just a small push on each side. That's all I'm doing. Just a small push. Boop, 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 boop. And my light grip on the bars means that they can autocorrect. So what you'll see is that first push that pushes it to the side will then dip the wheel in. I'm not going to bore you with the signs on it, even though I could totally verbalize it and explain it in every way needed. We'll just say that that small input makes a big output, and that's something to remember with your motorcycles. And the next thing that I'm going to go over is going to be something that can save your wrist, which you often, actually I don't even remember hearing about this during my MSF, but it's going to be a small change that you can do, and you will need some tools to do this, but it's probably going to be pretty minimal, 1, maybe 2 wrenches. And now what we're talking about is adjusting your controls to fit you. In the same way that all gloves are different sizes and fit you differently, well, the same thing applies for motorcycle controls. the way they set them up at the factory is not necessarily meant for every single person. And so to explain how to adjust your controls, I'm going to hand it back over to Inside Jeff.
Thanks for that on-bike, Jeff. Here we have the clutch side controls of a Ninja 400, and I'm going to use this to show you some adjustability in your controls. Now, every bike is going to be a little bit different. Some bikes have more adjustability than others from the factory. And of course, you can always throw aftermarket parts on a bike for more adjustability. But there are going to be two main adjustments that are going to make the most impact on your riding comfort and ease of use. One, which every bike should have the ability to adjust from the factory, which is going to be the angle of the lever itself. So how high or how low it can sit. The second option, which may require some aftermarket parts, is going to be the distance from the lever to the grips. Now, adjusting the angle of the lever is going to be relatively easy on just about every bike. On most bikes, there's going to be one, maybe two pinch bolts that keeps the controls locked into their place. In this case, the Ninja 400 has one 10mm bolt right here, which pinches the lever to the bar itself. And so to adjust it, you get a 10mm wrench, you just loosen it up, and you can move it up and down. Now, when it comes to adjusting the angle, you want to have it set so that your wrist is coming at a nice neutral position. You don't want to grab the lever and have it set up to where your wrist is bent up. So if I adjusted this high, let's say to there, and I go to reach on the grips, I place my hand down, and you can see there's this significant bend in my wrist. Now, if I'm in traffic and I'm modulating the clutch all the time, I'm squeezing that, you can see how much my wrist has to come back up. And that is going to cause discomfort over time. Now, oppose that to something that's adjusted further down. We can see that to reach it, my wrist stays at a much more neutral position. And when I pull back, there is still a slight bend in my wrist, but you can see my fat rolls aren't shown there like they are up here. So it's significantly less, and it's a whole lot more comfortable to do this over and over through a commute or through a long ride, especially as opposed to this. And that same mentality is going to apply for your brake side lever as well. So when you adjust your levers, both your clutch and your brakes, just keep in mind that you want to keep that neutral position. And there are a ton of videos online about how to adjust your controls. If you want a more in-depth one, just leave a comment down below. I will make that for you. But keep in mind, you want to have a neutral wrist. So in this case, this is a nice neutral position for me. So I'm going to get this 10mm, I'm going to keep that lever down, and I'm just going to tighten this up. You don't have to crank it down super hard, just get it snug, and then a quarter turn, and that ain't going nowhere. Now, the second important adjustment is going to be the distance of the lever to the controls. So if I go to grab the lever, we can see that it's engaging right here at my second knuckles. If I turn my hand over, this is where the lever is resting. And that, while I can use it, doesn't provide much control. So it makes it harder to make really minute adjustments, especially with my clutch. So if I'm doing friction zone stuff, if I am trying to launch, and if we're considering the brake side lever, you know, if I'm trying to do fine braking, it's a lot harder to control from here as opposed to here. And that is where we want our clutch lever to be adjusted to. We want it to be at the first knuckle. So a lot of budget bikes don't come with adjustable levers. So you may have to purchase some. In this case, on this Ninja 400, I have these Vortex levers. And these Vortex levers have an adjustment clicker right here. So I can move the lever further in, and that's going to be the natural resting position, or I can crank it all the way out, and there's much more distance. And again, you want to have it adjusted so that you are grabbing the levers with your front knuckles. You have a lot more dexterity with the tips of your fingers than you do the middle of your fingers. The most you can really do here is just squeeze on and off. It's a lot harder to control and make fine adjustments as opposed to this, where I can make tons of fine adjustments, and I can feel those adjustments with my hand. But that is the basics for your hand control adjustments for both your clutch and your brake lever. You're going to follow the same principles: neutral wrist, grabbing by the first knuckles. And so with that, I will flip it back over to On Bike Jeff.
Thanks for that insight, Jeff. That about wraps it up for me here. Please like and subscribe. At the time of filming, I am just a hair off of 3,000 subscribers. If I get to 10,000 subscribers, I will, I don't know, post my full name, date of birth, and social security number. We'll do that. But with that being said, if you would like to find me on other platforms, I am on Instagram at trash.works. I am also on TikTok at TrashWerks. But I will see you in the next one.